Thank you for the support, Harry Potter fans. Welcome back to the page. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. Here we are with Chapter 47, The Sweet Far Thing.
Chapter 47, Epilogue. Chapter Text. Epilogue. 32 years later. Harry Potter fiddled with a spell-enhanced marshmallow roaster while he maintained a steady stream of concerns. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to be a grandfather, and Sirius is certainly not getting any younger, and he needs to have some when he can still enjoy them. But honestly, do you think that James and Sarah are ready to have children? They only married 2 months ago. Are you certain that Sarah is pregnant? Arthur asked mildly. Ginny says she is, Harry said. And you know how Ginny is. She gets it from your wife, and Molly started giving us knowing looks practically the day after Lily was conceived. Arthur snorted. Are you sure that you aren't just concerned that you aren't ready to be a grandfather? That, and I'm afraid of what might come of a Potter and Black union. Harry shuddered. It was not entirely feigned. The fact that Harry's son had fallen in love with Sirius' daughter had shocked the entire family, not least because it was made public when Harry and Sirius walked in on them having sex in the kitchen at Grimmauld Place. Harry had told his son, truthfully, what his father had told him so long ago. James was a braver man than Harry. Harry would not want to be Sirius' son-in-law given how fierce and protective he was of his youngest child and only daughter. He suspected that his parents were laughing. Neville's only 6, Harry said a bit plaintively, and Viola is only 8. Am I really old enough to be a granddad? Arthur threw back his head and laughed. Ah, son, let me tell you a little secret. Being a granddad is infinitely easier than being a dad. Thank God. Harry muttered. Out of habit, he glanced around the shed. He had been a very frequent visitor in the last few decades. He'd panicked when Ginny had gotten pregnant for the first time, and Arthur had spent hours soothing him and giving him advice, mostly how to survive the pregnancy without getting his bits hexed off. He'd thought that things would calm down once James had arrived, but he'd spent even more time asking all sorts of things that he probably didn't need to fret over. All right. So what do I do if he accidentally levitates himself into the wall safe? I've heard that magical children can do that. What if I've left the safe open and it closes behind him? Do you think I should just get rid of the safe? Then James had started talking and walking and generally raising hell. All had arrived, and Harry had needed Arthur's calming nature every other day. Harry was proud of himself that he only met with Arthur about once a week now. His 2 youngest, Viola and Neville, were either much easier to manage, or Harry had, finally, gotten the hang of being a father. And now he just might be a granddad. And AL's been acting odd lately, Harry said. At least he's home for Christmas, Arthur pointed out. And you didn't actually have to depose the minister for not telling you what he was up to. Harry grimaced. He had not taken it well when his second son had practically disappeared off the face of the earth. Harry generally left all the unspeakables to hell alone, but ever since his son had fallen in with that crowd, gotten a job with them, the secrecy had bothered him. And the months of only sporadic contact with him, an owl, once a month, saying that he was fine, I was not much of a correspondent, had frayed Harry's nerves to the breaking point. I'm the head of the Auror department, Harry said sourly. You'd think that they could have told me where he's been and what he's been up to. You know that Audrey had no idea what was going on, Arthur said. And threatening to depose your own sister-in-law, he chortled. I laughed for weeks. I still think Percy knew, Harry said stubbornly. He did not like to think it. He was probably closest to Percy of all the Weasley brothers besides Ron. And despite the fact that Percy had, 13 years ago, decided to completely change his career and become an unspeakable without giving any reasons, Percy had always been very above board. You and Ron aren't still convinced that Percy's Merlin, are you? Arthur asked. Harry shrugged. It was a compelling idea, but it simply made no sense. Harry wondered if the person of Merlin even existed anymore. There didn't seem to be any need. All was well. All was better than well. Harry had never dreamed that he could be this happy, and he suspected that whatever reason Merlin had gone back in time in the first place simply did not exist anymore. Mainly we just joke about it, Harry admitted. But you have to admit, Percy's lips are sealed tighter than a Gringotts vault. Who knows what he gets up to with his unspeakable friends? You're dealing with something that is very difficult for any father, Arthur said. The idea that your children have lives that exist separately from your own. They have their secrets. For instance, I've always wondered how James survived Sirius after he and Sarah were found at Grimmauld Place. I've always wondered that too, Harry said thoughtfully. But none of them are saying. And it must be doubly hard with Al, Arthur said compassionately, since the very nature of his job requires him to tell you nothing about what he gets up to. I admit that when Percy first transferred over to the Department of Mysteries, I felt a bit misplaced. He doesn't come to me for advice, or to complain about his superiors, or even to brag about his latest promotion. Does it get easier? Harry asked. You get used to it, Arthur said. He glanced at his watch, and his eyes widened. Molly's going to jinx us if we miss Christmas dinner. We'd better get back to the burrow. Harry opened his eyes wide. Don't you want your Christmas present? He greatly enjoyed the way Arthur perked right up. Ron had come by his honest love of Christmas and presents honestly, and Harry had a feeling that Arthur would enjoy this particular present a great deal. It's a bit used. Viola insisted on trying it out just to make sure it was good enough for her granddad. With a flourish of his wand, he lifted the temporary disillusionment charm he had cast on the riding lawn mower and laughed when Arthur gasped with delight. Is a lawn plower? He asked excitedly. I've been wanting one for ages. He touched it lovingly. It's so shiny and new. Thank you, Harry. Don't tell anyone I said this, but the Potters give the best gifts. Harry hugged him. Only the best for you. He felt a faint twinge of annoyance that was not his own. Ginny's getting restless, he announced. We'd better go back in before she gets riled. Harry laughed again at the mildly jealous look on Arthur's face. He was, Harry had to admit, the envy of the Weasley men. There was nothing like being able to sense his wife's emotions. It certainly kept him off the sofa. He still did not quite understand the magic behind the connection he and Ginny shared. There were no books written about it, no tomes showing diagrams for why things happened the way they did, and not even Hermione could pinpoint an exact reason. But the simple fact of the matter was that Harry could feel Ginny, and Ginny could feel Harry, and it was as beautiful as the sunset right after a bomb has exploded. Harry and Arthur walked in companionable silence back toward the burrow. Harry stuffed his hands in his pockets. The December day was as cold as iron, and their feet crunched on the snow. Molly's confessing that she's Merlin this year. Arthur broke the silence halfway across the yard. Harry grinned at the reminder of the annual game they played. It had become a tradition. Every year, one of them had invented a more and more outlandish tale. But she's put a twist on it. She's confessing that Merlin was, in fact, Dobby, and he told her on his deathbed that it had been him. Arthur chuckled. Harry joined in. This had the promise of being even funnier than last year, when Snape and Dumbledore's portrait had claimed to be Merlin, using a mixture of time travel, body snatching, and wart powder. It's Ginny's turn again next year, Harry said. I think she's already planning it. Molly thought of this last year, Arthur admitted. Said she wanted to try something new. I probably shouldn't have told you. You know, Harry said, the only person that Merlin ever said he wasn't was Dobby. Did we ever tell you that? He said, I'm not Dobby. He could have just been trying to throw us off the scent, though. Daddy, Neville shouted. Neville always shouts, Harry thought exasperatedly. His youngest had only come with two settings, shouting and sleeping. Did Granddad put your head back together? What? Harry said blankly. He lifted his youngest up in his arms, wondering how long Neville would allow him to do this. That's what Mummy says, Viola smiled. And stop shouting. Neville, Mummy says we have to practice being quiet for when James' baby comes. Oh, Merlin's balls, how did she know? James muttered, confirming Harry's fear. Sarah laughed. Harry saw the way his youngest daughter's bright green eyes sparkled mischievously. Another Slytherin, Harry thought wryly. And he had a good idea that Viola knew exactly what she had done. Shut up, Viola, Neville yelled. Mummy said not to say. Neville Arthur Potter, Harry said sternly. What we told you about telling your sister to shut up. Yeah, Napai, Viola smirked. And don't make fun of your brother's name, Harry said wearily, before Neville could retaliate. His son had inherited his mother's temper, along with her red hair. Viola, however, was the female version of Harry. Better than AL's initials, James said, reaching over and ruffling his little brother's hair. With initials like ASP, no wonder he got into Slytherin. I'm going to be in Gryffindor, Neville roared. Harry winced and moved him so he was not quite so close to his ear. Like you and Lily. Of course you'll be in Gryffindor, James said bracingly. We'll leave Slytherin for Al and Viola, won't we? Yes. I'm going to beg the Sorting Hat to put me in Slytherin, said Viola, who practically worshipped Albus. We know, Mags, Ginny said fondly. Slytherin is great, Viola, Al said. He threw a casual arm around her thin shoulders, and Harry was forcibly reminded of how very much the two of them looked alike, despite the difference in gender. Viola had the same thin face, messy hair, green eyes, and sly smile. You'll really like it. Al looked around the room, an indefinable expression on his face, as though he were drinking in the sight of all of them. Al, Percy said quietly, did I ever tell anyone that I had a special, marauder-like nickname while I was at school? Al asked. He looked over and grinned at Sirius. A few of my friends call me the Wise ASP, since I'm a bit of a wise arse, and we were all in Slytherin. An ASP is a type of snake. Harry threw a startled look at Ron. It was funny that Al had gotten that nickname before they had sat down with him, on his 17th birthday, and told him the full truth of the time travel. He opened his mouth to remark on the funny coincidence. And a diversion in the form of Rolf and Luna Scamander and their 9-year-old twins arrived in a flurry of bundled packages, whispered swear words, and excitedly popping eyes. Neville and Viola immediately dragged Lorcan and Lysander, who were very cool since they traveled around the world with their naturalist parents, away to get into some sort of mischief. Remind me to check on them in 10 minutes, Ginny said. We don't want them to blow up the house. I suppose I shouldn't have given the twins that rumpant horn, Luna said vaguely. All the adults, even James, Al, and Lily, looked at her aghast. Luna, Hermione said, you gave those for hoodlums. Of course not, Luna laughed. Hermione hesitated only a moment, but then stepped forward and swept the blonde woman into a hug. I've missed you, she said. You haven't been back to Britain for almost 6 months. Ron has been driving me crazy. Hey, said Ron, you're the one who... Finish that sentence, and you won't even be allowed on the same floor of the master bedroom for the next month, Hermione warned. Her cheeks were bright pink. Harry did not want to know what this was about. The next several minutes were spent in such a cacophony of greetings. Harry shook Rolf's hand at least 3 times, hugged Luna 4 times, and joined in the overall joviality of the moment. Snape, who always missed Rolf a great deal at family suppers on Sundays. He's the only sane one the whole lot. And I never thought Looney would bring home someone who doesn't believe in Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy. Was the loudest of all. Aunt Luna, Lily said enthusiastically. I got an internship with the Surrey Society for Specialized Species. I'm going to be a naturalist just like you. That's wonderful, Luna said. She grabbed Lily up in a hug. Harry could not help but notice that Al and Percy had hung back and were now whispering urgently to each other in an alcove. He narrowed his eyes. Percy was AL's godfather, so they had always been close. But Luna was AL's godmother, and it was highly unusual for him not to be telling her everything that had happened since she'd been gone. He saw Percy give his head a vehement shake, and Al rolled his eyes. Where's my godson? Luna called. She spotted Al and hurried over to him. She was about to throw her arms around him, but stopped short. Harry glanced over at Ginny, then Ron, and then Hermione, all of whom were staring. Harry felt a growing denial that came from Ginny. What is she denying? What's going on? Hi, Merlin, said Luna. Her voice rang in the suddenly silent room. How'd you enjoy the past? The floor dropped away from Harry's feet, and he felt his own shock compounded by Ginny's shock. What the hell? Harry gaped at Al, who was staring at the floor. No way. Fuck, Ron said reverently. Holy shit. It was fine, Aunt Luna, Al said. It was just fine. Harry's second son took a deep breath and looked up. Green eyes met green, and Harry could see that his son was sheepish, defiant, proud, and not a little afraid. Dad, Mom, everyone, I got a confession to make. I'm Merlin. Harry's world shifted, and he saw little bursts of stars. His brain tingled, and the swirl of a memory caught him up, as if he carried a pensive inside his head, and as if he were sucked through a door that had suddenly opened in his memory. Almost everyone he loved was dead. They were gone forever. They were never coming back. Tom Riddle was also gone, but Harry, who had spent the last decade fighting for that end, did not seem to care. He staggered onto the path that led to the forbidden forest just outside Hagrid's hut. It looked like Hagrid, too, was dying of wounds inflicted by Voldemort's giants. Emergency healers from St. Mungo's had looked as though there was little hope. This was what Harry had fought for, to be the last man standing. It seemed so ridiculous that Harry had laughed, a mad and wild sound that frightened him. It seemed to echo strangely among the trees. He looked down at the stone still held tightly in his palm. He had dropped it when he had been struck by Voldemort's killing curse. He did not want to summon them again. It had been all right when he had thought he was about to die. He'd been about to join them. They were fetching him. But now, how could he possibly bear the guilt of surviving? All of them, they died like they were supposed to, whether it was by the killing curse or flame or some other method. But no, he was Harry Potter, the boy who lived. It seemed like he was the only one who ever lived. He flung the stone into the trees as far as it would go. He couldn't possibly face them, not when it was so bloody unfair that he still breathed and they did not. He knelt on the ground and gripped his hair in his hands, pulling so tightly on it that it hurt. He wondered how he would do it. Should he slit his wrists with Gryffindor's sword? How was that for irony? Jump from the astronomy tower, his body broken and bent like Dumbledore's? Had actually come to this? He was plotting his own death instead of Voldemort's. The snap of a twig, the clearing of a throat, the intake of breath. Harry did not want to know who it was that had followed him. He knew who it wasn't. He rested his palms against the moist, springy earth and waited for whoever it was to talk. "It's going to be all right," said a firm, sure voice. Harry did not recognize it. He just shook his head. He was suddenly too tired to move. His wand was in his pocket, and he did not even have the strength to pull it out. So was fatalistic resignation he felt when ropes bound him hand and foot. "Coward," Harry said tonelessly, just because he had to say something. "Can't even kill me without making sure I can't fight back first." "I'm not going to kill you," whoever it was said. Harry cracked his eyes open. "What the hell?" he said blankly. There in the clearing was himself. The man before him was tall and thin, with untidy hair, eyes exactly the color and shape as Harry's. He looked closer. No glasses. No scar. He gaped at the other man, completely and utterly speechless. "Is it me?" Harry asked himself, unsure. "Listen," the other man said. "I've got to do this. I'm really sorry, but Dumbledore dash." Harry groaned. "Merlin, are we still listening to Dumbledore? If he'd told me that I was a Horcrux, everyone would still be alive. I would have died years ago. I'm not you." "That's really excellent," Harry said. He sounded very bitter. But here he was after his final confrontation with Voldemort. He had lost everyone, and now some scarless version of himself with perfect vision had come and tied him up. "Because I don't know how I would have survived having a second dash." He interrupted himself. He squinted at the man. The resemblance between the two of them was remarkable. It was striking. He was forcibly reminded of the time he had thought that he had seen his own father, but it had been his future self. "You aren't me from the future?" Harry asked uncertainly. "No," the man said. He met Harry's eyes steadily. "But I am from the future. Not this future, though. I didn't quite understand. Never mind. I'm your son. I'm Albus Potter." Harry fought against his bindings. "You're insane. We're insane. Or are you under Polyjuice Potion?" "I'm telling the truth," he said. Then he flashed a quick smile. "You eventually go back in time with Mom and Uncle Ron to save everyone from this fate dash." "I fail again," Harry said, aghast despite himself. If what this lunatic was saying was true, he went back in time, and obviously he fucked something up again. Otherwise, the lunatic claiming to be his son from the future wouldn't be here. A vicious throbbing began behind his left eye. "I go back in time to change things, and I screw up again?" "No," said the lunatic. There was something shifty in his eyes. Harry eyed him suspiciously. "Did you screw everything up?" he asked. The lunatic took too long to answer, and Harry laughed incredulously. I must have been a really great father, Harry said sarcastically. You dash. I'll have to remind myself that if I ever have kids, I'll tell them to just say no to time travel, Harry interrupted. You don't dash. Harry ignored him. But it's not as though you're real, anyway. Just a figment of my imagination. The lunatic looked frustrated and sullen in turns. Stop, if you'll just let me dash. But Harry did not like the idea that he had gone insane. He understood it, of course. His lifetime stretched out before him, and he was completely alone. Completely. He was already so lonely that he was hallucinating a conversation with his son from a future that could not exist. Not without Ginny. This just seems fitting, doesn't it? I finally beat Voldemort and go insane dash. The lunatic muttered something underneath his breath. Harry opened his mouth to speak, but found that he had been silenced. For a moment, he was uncertain. Can hallucinations do spells? He asked himself. Mum, Ginny Potter, and Uncle Ron are alive, the lunatic said loudly. You're going to go back in time and save everyone and eventually have me. And I'm going to help things a bit for you. And don't worry, I'm a professional. He continued to speak, but Harry was unable to comprehend what he was saying after he claimed that Ginny and Ron were still alive. Hope unfurled inside his chest, though he tried to stop it. It was going to hurt terribly if they were still dead. But if they were alive, and Dumbledore told me that I should do it, the lunatic said. He sounded defensive, and Harry felt suddenly apprehensive. He had a feeling that he would not like what was about to happen. Dash. But it was too late. A small bottle of potion was upended into his mouth. I'll stay with you until the potion takes effect. It shouldn't be too long. The lunatic was trying to reassure him. Harry glared at the copy of himself. Everything was very surreal. What if he's telling the truth? A small voice inside his head asked. And I'm going to have to confund you, too, he said apologetically. Don't look at me like that, Dad. I'm sure you'd agree that it has to be done. Harry did not believe this. He vowed to tell any children he might have someday that Dad would not like it if they played with his memories and teamed up with Dumbledore to manipulate his life. They would be absolutely certain that. Dad, Al said apprehensively. Harry could just stare as every moment in that forest came back to him. He had thought that Al was a lunatic. He'd thought that he'd been driven insane by loss. He surreptitiously pinched himself, wondering if he was dreaming. Al had been there. His son was Merlin. He'd traveled through time, stolen memories, twisted events, written that damn article, made Harry think that he was going to die. He'd been there in the Department of Mysteries when Harry had discovered just how powerful a force love actually was. He'd walked with Harry when Harry had thought he was going to die. He'd been there. His son. It's true, Harry said. I have a memory. He must have used the Forget for Now potion on you, Percy murmured. He used it on me as well. I presume the unlocking phrase was, I'm Merlin. Al. Ginny's voice was unsteady. Harry did not take his eyes off his son, but he knew without having to look that everyone in the room was standing as still as statues. Why? The price was too high, said Al.